Senator Scott, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, ranking member, and committee members, it is an absolute honor to sit before you today to introduce my good friend, fellow senator from Florida, and future Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. I'd also like to recognize his wonderful family who's here today, his wife, Jeanette, daughter, Daniela, sister, Barbara and Veronica, and nephew, Orlando. And back home, Amanda, Anthony, and Dominic. All of us here today know that Marco is an exceptional nominee. He is the perfect person to carry out President-elect Trump's policies and to protect America's national security and to bring peace and stability back to the Western Hemisphere. The son of Cuban immigrants, Marco learned at a young age about the suffering and oppression of socialism and brings valuable knowledge from his roles here on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and the Senate Intelligence Committee. In our state of Florida, we hear often from those who came to the United States to escape dangerous regimes and live the American dream that most Marco and many of us have had the opportunity to live. Every person we meet serves as a reminder of why the United States must always stand for freedom and democracy. President Trump's record in his first term was clear. He unapologetically fought to protect freedom and democracy across Latin America and ended the failed Obama-era appeasement policies that had created a vacuum for tyranny in the region. After 4 years of Joe Biden, President Trump will have to start that fight over. But he has an incredible asset with Marco Rubio on his team. Marco sees the values of our allies and Democratic leaders who will stand up to our adversaries and who will work with the United States, deny footholds to Communist China, Iran, and Russia, and fight alongside America to protect our shared national security interests and create better trade relations. While the Biden administration has abandoned America's allies, President-elect Trump and Senator Rubio are clear-eyed and understand that where freedom and democracy exists, America has strong allies and trusted trade partners. Marco has a strong record of holding the regimes in Communist China, Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua accountable for their repression and tyranny. He will work with President Trump to punish communist regimes for their crimes and make clear to our enemies and partners alike around. Most importantly, Marco will always put America's best interests first. Marco, congratulations. You've served the people of Florida well. It's been an honor to work with you as Senator, and I will continue working together with you on issues that matter deeply to the people of Florida, to our nation. You're well deserving of this role. You'll do an incredible job. I'll end up being the senior senator finally. I'm proud to support you and urge all of my colleagues to do the same. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Scott. First of all, let me say, as we open this first hearing, I'm pleased to be serving alongside my colleague, Senator Shaheen. She and I have worked together over a number of years. We were governors together and came in at the same time together. We have had actually some experience in this regard in the Small Business Committee where we had the same roles. And so we're used to each other. And we're going to do our best to have hearings and work at this committee on a bipartisan basis. We won't always agree, obviously, but we will do our very best to disagree civilly and let the process work as it should. So with that, let's turn to the hearing today, and I want to welcome my great friend Marco Rubio to this hearing. Likewise, Marco and I go back a long ways. I look back at when I got to the Senate 16 years ago. I came to this first hearing and took my seat way down there at the end and spent 2 years there, and then that afternoon went over to the Intelligence Committee and again took my seat way down on the end down there, served a couple of years, and then 2 years later, by the way, when I went into the Intelligence Committee, I don't know if I've ever told anyone this story before, but I walked in there and a little nervous because, you know, about to learn all the deep, dark secrets of the United States of America, and I went in and sat down, and someone came up to me and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Senator, you seem to have brought an electronic device with you into this room." This was in the SCIF over in our semi-secret room over in the Hart Building. And so I learned then that the Intelligence Committee does know a lot. So I gave up my, my electronic device. 2 years later, I was no longer on the end. Senator Rubio came and joined me down at the end and sat at my left there. And we went to the hearing in the morning to the Foreign Relations Committee. That afternoon, we went over to the Intelligence Committee. Again, there he was, sat down next to me on my left. And as he sat down, I said, by the way, I said to him, I hope you don't have any electronic devices with you. And he says, well, no, you doofus, there's a big sign out there that says, don't bring any electronic. So I judged him to be a very astute person at that point. In my defense, that sign wasn't there 2 years earlier. And they don't give you a course on what you can and can't bring in. So anyway, that was my introduction to Marco Rubio. Since then, we've worked together for a long time on issues and have found ourselves almost always in violent agreement on virtually every issue we dealt with, both here in the Foreign Relations Committee and on the Intelligence Committee, and worked together closely as we were ranking member on and chairman on those two committees. There's out of all the issues we've done, I can only think of one issue that we disagreed on. It's a very, very small issue, a very tiny issue. It deals with intelligence, so unfortunately we won't be able to discuss it here today. But Marco, I have a small gift for you as you part here in your last hearing here. I'll give it, assuming you survive this hearing, I'll give it to you at the end of the hearing. So welcome, and in a moment I'm going to give you a chance to make your opening statement. I'm going to talk a little bit, Jane is, and then we'll get to you. Unfortunately, we meet at a time when America faces threats from nearly every corner of the world. It's no secret that hostile powers from China to Russia, from North Korea to Iran, have formed an authoritarian axis bent on weakening the United States. Sadly, the outgoing administration has frequently made ill-informed decisions that have empowered these adversaries. From the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal to its desperate efforts to woo Iran, failure to deter Russian aggression, constant concessions to China, and undermining support for Israel, our allies question U.S. resolve, and our adversaries believe they have a free hand. Those days are over. China remains the most significant long-term risk to the United States. The Chinese government steals American intellectual property, floods our streets with fentanyl, and exploits our free markets for its own gain while aggressively undermining American national security. China is no longer satisfied to undermine the United States on its own. Now it helps Russia, Iran, and North Korea. Chinese support has enabled Russia to carry on its illegal war against Ukraine, and China's massive purchases of Iranian oil are a lifeline to that murderous regime's proxy wars. The outgoing administration's failure to push back on China's aggression means that China is challenging America everywhere, from Africa to our hemisphere in Latin America. Senator Rubio has been a strong advocate of tougher policies to counter China's aggression, and particularly in Latin America. In the Middle East, Israel fights a multi-front war against Iran after the brutal attack on October 7th. Yet the outgoing administration has undermined support to Israel. This has only prolonged the terrible situation in Israel and Gaza. In spite of the outgoing administration's policy, Israel's fortitude has brought Tehran to its weakest point in decades. President Trump and Marco both know that we need to support our ally and return to a maximum pressure campaign against Iran. At the same time, Putin, with the support of the CCP, continues his violent assault on Ukraine. Putin has escalated this war over and over again, most recently by importing thousands of North Korean soldiers. I've said repeatedly since the beginning of 2022 full-scale invasion, we need to help Ukraine end this war quickly and permanently. I'm confident that if anyone can end this war, it's President Trump. And Marco is the right man to help ensure it is done in a way that guarantees security and stability for Ukraine, the U.S., and our allies, and prevents Russia from launching another war. Unfortunately, the threats to American interests don't end there. A genocide in Sudan, a much-needed but still uncertain regime change in Syria, human rights abuses, human trafficking. The list of challenges facing America is long. And because of that, we must rein in and enforce accountability at the United Nations, whose agenda and wasteful practices frequently do not align with those of the United States. In Asia, it will be important to work with our allies in Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and the Philippines to boost their military spending and bolster their ability to deter China. We should work with Australia and the United Kingdom as part of the AUKUS agreement to develop and advance military capabilities to counter Chinese coercion in the Indo-Pacific. And I hope the State Department will acknowledge the nuclear arms race our adversaries are pursuing and make the changes needed to confront this new reality. Further, U.S. foreign assistance is not charity. American taxpayer dollars should only be spent to advance U.S. interests, and every penny should be scrutinized to ensure its necessity and effectiveness in advancing America's interests. Often enormous amounts of money are spread thinly around the world and never really accomplish goals. This also needs to stop. A final word on the operations of the State Department itself. The Department must refocus itself on the core mission of effective diplomacy. Every program, office, and policy at State must effectively advance U.S. foreign policy goals, not advance progressive ideology. The outgoing administration often undercut effective foreign policy by inserting ideological and political requirements into the fabric of personnel decisions and policy execution. Rather than making hires or promotions based on merit and effectiveness, the Department created a new diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility requirements that distracted from this mission, undermined morale, and created an unfair and opaque process for promotions and performance evaluations. Fealty to progressive politics became the benchmark for success. As we look around the United States, that view is diminishing very quickly amongst even large corporations, amongst even large progressive-leaning corporations. Adherence to these goals was assured at the State Department through a rigid enforcement structure that included senior advisors for DEIA in nearly every bureau and Soviet-style anonymous reporting portals where employees were encouraged to denounce colleagues who would not toe the company line. This must end on day one. We need a return to merit, and I know Marco will right that ship. Senator Rubio, this is a long laundry list of crises. You've earned yourself one of the hardest jobs in America, but after serving with you for so many years, I'm confident you are the right person we need to take on these threats. Thank you very much. And to my good friend, Senator Shaheen, I yield the floor.